Power of the magnetic. Pharaoh was considered a god of his time. He left works, he left enchantments and marvels that flourish to today as relics from those primitive times of his empire of enchantment. He was a very evil Negro person and developed his great work of magnetism, which was the force inspired by the ancient gods in conquest of the proud ones and of those ones who shined the most. The pharaoh shined with his great magnetic gift, emerged by the secret of animals. At that time, the clothes were all completely different from nowadays. They were made of animal skins, and the pharaoh, as he was a great wise man, wore clothes that were comprised of all sort of skins and fur from animals of that time. If the cloth was of fur, he would make it with a piece of fur from each animal. If it was of hide, the same thing. If it was of feathers, also the same thing. At that time, the living beings last for a long time, and their preoccupation was only the study of nature, and for the duration being long, they had enough time to learn many things. Pharaoh was a good medium, and taking possession of a great magnetic force, he developed that force and did great prodigies. The prodigies were such that nature ended up turning against their own inhabitants, giving origin to the existence of today as called Desert of Sahara. The Sahara became a kind of cursed place, unproductive and subject to constant windstorms, reason why, being of so long memories, the new generations think that there was existed a deluge when, in fact, occurred a great earthquake. That is why once in a while, you used to find bones of monster animals buried there. And the new generations start to know the distant existence of mastodons, which no one presently knows. Because all of this happened, you usually wrongly say that the world has already once ended by water. That is because in other times there was no transportation, no one considered going around discovering new lands to make contact with other nations and other places. Everyone lived in isolation. Everyone lived by themselves. The neighboring countries were very remote, far from each other, and so, no one knew of the other existences, and that is why the supposition about the end of the world through a deluge came about. When the countries became more advanced, start to move around, it is when they came to discover the Desert of Sahara, which was, in remote times, a large city. Then, that primitive pharaoh, being of a great magnetic force, did everything from overnight, and because the people follow that same symbol of magnetism, that is why they were a bad and devilish people, doing impossible and bizarre things, of so much evil among them, and for all of that not to spread among other people. With time, nature itself revolted against its inhabitants. Later, many different pharaohs appeared in those same conditions, with those same influences from the enchantment, still existing up today, their enchanted caves where reigns the malefactions to any creature that dares to enter in those caves where they were buried. Now, if that pharaoh was like that, he attracted with his evil influences the influences of other pharaohs, who did not have so much power as the primitive one, but who even so produce evil, as any and each magnetic force only produces evil. Many are mistaken and think that the magnetic force produces the goodness. If the magnetic force produced the goodness, everyone would be well, because everyone is product of the magnetic force, since everyone is product of matter. The magnetic force produces the matter. That is why the human being is a sufferer, is evil, is a material being. The living beings that develop themselves to acquire the magnetic force become beasts in human shape. The invisible magnetic force produces theses, stones, so-called rays, and coruscation. And notice the blasts and booms when they fall on Earth. What are they product of? Of the magnetic force. If the living beings were not made from the magnetic force, you would be eternal, but because you are a product of this magnetic force, it is why everything is like that, appearing to be everything and in truth you are nothing. You are there, appearing you had a life, but because life is made by magnetism, it is that you disappear from one moment to the next, you lose your life. That is why the study of magnetism is a mysterious study, which no one can reach its end. Due to life itself being a product from magnetism, and, therefore, an inferior product, it could never give solution to the superior. Then, you live there feeding the magnetism with material beings, which are all you eat and drink. If you were not a product of magnetism, life would be everything and not nothing. Everything which is magnetism is apparent, that is why you appear to be the lords of life, but in reality, you are not. From one moment to the next you lose it without wanting to. Therefore, all this conjunct of terrestrial beings, all of it, is a product of the magnetic force. They are evil beings and are nothing. You live magnetizing each other and magnetized by one another. What is the sun? It is a magnetic aspirator. The moon is the same way, so are the stars. Everything magnetic formation, and that is why you are always in fire. Is it good what burns? No. What burns is bad, and, therefore, it was a magnetic aspirator which gave aspiration to other magnetic ones, which are under its dominion. The moon, another magnetic aspirator, another aspiration. It seems cold, but it is not cold. It is fire, it burns, thus being called the superior magnetic carbon, which is of the sun. The carbon, being from a carbonized formation, loses the influence of the embers of fire, but burning like fire. It lost the cherry red action of the ember, of the fire. It became dark, but even though different, it still has the same ardor. Then, many talk about magnetism and start to study it but never found the end. It is an endless study. If you were not produced by the magnetic force, you would be eternal, but because you are beings generated from the magnetic force, you live there apparently, until you cannot any longer. Many people, because they do not know nature or themselves, talk about magnetism without knowing what they are talking about, without knowing that their human form is made from magnetism, because the force is all magnetic and electric. The cold kills, for being the magnetic force from carbon. That is why the night is dark. It is of carbon, formed from the residue of the improvement of the formation of the sun. That is what originated another body. It is that gave the formation to the moon, with its life, trances, and the material effects. That is why the moon affects everything. One provides the effect and the other provides the formula. They are two watches in just one body. The sun is the watch and the moon the hands. The moon is the hands because, according to the hours, it wanes until it disappears completely and then waxes until it becomes round. It does so its quarters. The stars are monotones of the magnetic gyre. There are living beings who seeks to acquire great magnetic forces, but the effects are not good. They are destructive forces, disturbing, for being excessive charges, forces beyond the natural of the organism. They bring disequilibrium and the excessive lucidity. Whereas rational immunization regulates the magnetic bodies for being superior to all effects that comprise this world. The electric force is only good when well regulated. Developing and receiving charge that is superior to the organism's strength, it prejudices and brings the same negative as from magnetism, because where there is one, there is the other. That is why all spiritists end up suffering of heart and dying due to a heart disease. Because the heart is the dynamo of everyone, it is which receives all abnormal amperages, it is the most prejudiced organ in the human body. The human body still has the watch, which is the head, the hands, which are the eyes, the hands of sound, which are the ears, the hands of smell, which is the nose, the hands of taste, which is the tongue, and still the mouth, of supply of the cord, by where enters the food of the machine, the magnetic food of the material beings. Therefore, what is the spiritual part? What is spiritism? Spiritism is magnetism. They are of the same line, with the difference that in matter one part is visible and the other invisible. For being magnetism, it is that the spiritism never went beyond that, always enclosing everything in the infinite, mysteriously, which is just a clogging that delays the world since long eras and veteran centuries, always maintaining the suffering of this world, and each time worse. And the living beings, and cautious to the true knowledge of things, admitting it as a thing of great superiority. Many times suffering because of spiritism and, with time, distrusting and making others distrust as well, due to arriving the conclusion that the spiritism is like any other creed of foolish science. If it were not foolish, since long everyone in the world would be right, because the spiritism would adjust everyone with its force, with its power, with its equilibrium of a powerful one. But because all of this being from the electric and magnetic part, it is that you never could reach the clear conclusion of things proved and confirmed, as many wished it were, for them to then admit it. And that is why some admit it, and so, they go on in adventures, fooling around and suffering. And some do not admit it, saying that bad for bad, it is better staying as they are. Those decrypted ones claim that they are incarnating and disincarnating in spiritism, since the beginning of this world. Well, the world is already very old, so you had to already be born, due to the reincarnations of the spirits, wise men, perfect ones, and pure ones, but at the end, you are born the opposite, each time worse, each time wilder beasts. All of that you need to learn, and the truth is that you are bad, evil, inhuman, savages, and true beasts. This is for the decrypted ones who still dream with the fruit of illusion, for the blind ones with open eyes who do not know how to divulge not even what they are seeing, for being product of magnetism, magnetic beings, magnetized and magnetizing. That is what happens with the living beings who keep getting magnetized by the things they are seeing, but do not know how to divulge the reasons of the things. Then they usually say that they are suggested, that they live dominated by self-suggestion, product of the dirtiness, because you came from dirtiness. What is the origin of the human being? What is spermatozoid? It is a liquid, with similarity of a gum, evidence that you are indeed a product of sludge, and for that, admitting is good all the foolish things, and by them you are dominated, having in the suggestion and the self-suggestion the illusion of what you think is useful and good. And so, being life comprised of magnetic beings, due to its effects it is that the world lives in this confusion since long, where the philosophies could never stop suffering, since the sects and philosophies are all made by the magnetizers who are the human beings. And for that, the more philosophies, the more suffering, as since long the world has been feeling. Which philosophy brought to the world the goodness, peace, and happiness of all? None. Because all of it is a magnetic effect. And for being magnetic effect, it is that evil has always multiplied, always increasing, not decreasing. Therefore, notice that the truth is not yet there, as many people think, for being magnetized by this or that philosophy. Magnetism is of such a power, so natural for being of everyone's nature, that the living beings are magnetized by this or that and are not aware of it due to nature being magnetic. You speak about goodness, you speak about good, but everything is passing. Everything is passing for being product of the magnetic effects and from magnetic origin. Then the living being asks, and in Spiritism, is not there the truth? And I reply, no. The word is already saying, in experience. It is what Spiritism means, because it is of the same magnetic conjunct, invisible beings, of the electric and magnetic formation, which comprises the conjunct of the formation of the world, with the difference of being invisible beings, or invisible bodies, as the wind. The wind is an invisible body, you feel it but do not see it, it is powerful. And such, other gases and other things that exist of the same ramification. As electricity, which is a very powerful body, but invisible, you feel it but do not see it. So, there is the visible magnetic part and the invisible magnetic part. For example, a bad wind is invisible, but due to its great magnetic charge it only produces bad things. Electricity is invisible, but with its very powerful charge, it kills the living being, it carbonizes him. Therefore, there are visible and invisible magnetic bodies, as there are visible and invisible electric bodies. And electric light is a visible electric body. Now, the living being who does not have any education about anything accepts everything and never knows what he says, many people living like that, magnetized by Spiritism and thinking that in Spiritism is the truth of truths. If in the Spiritism was the truth of truths, since long everyone would have the perfect solution of the world, because if the owner of the world was a spirit, it would since long have given the solutions of the beginning and end of the world, and everyone would be governed by spirits, you would have to obey, if in Spiritism was the truth of truths, which you wrongly proclaim. Due to men of science not finding any support in Spiritism, it is that they always put themselves superior to the Spiritism. And that is why who governs are men and not the spirits. The spirits obey the laws of men and not men obey the laws of the spirits, because, since long, it was verified that the law of the Spiritism is a decrepit law for those who want to be fooling with such philosophy or tramplelisophy. Tramplelisophy means, trampled by a mysterious science, without beginning and without end, more adequate to bad results than to the good ones, due to not being defined, living the spiritists always in experiences and mistaking more than succeeding. There is the reason for the failures of adepts of Spiritism. There are many living beings that for not knowing think and judge that rational immunization is Spiritism. Rational immunization is different from Spiritism, as from water to wine. It is from another superior level, which is the rational part, from where the living being, linked by the immunization, receives everything he needs. He is an immunized one for being from the rational part. If it were from the spiritual part, he would receive the spiritualization. For lacking the instructions to the living being, it is that, for lack of knowledge, he has in fact to make confusion. Rational immunization does not belong to the magnetic and electric part. It is from a superior world to this one. It is directly done from rational plane, which lies much above the sun. The immunized one is linked to this one up here, by means of the immunization, which gives to the living being all perfect elucidation of anything. Once immunized, you are aware of everything, being, therefore, very different from spiritualization. The spiritualization is from there, from that electric and magnetic conjunct, from that globe, that world. That is why spiritualization is failure and the immunization is perfect and does not fail. All of those explanations of many ways are necessary because for many ones an insignificant explanation is enough for them to understand everything and others need many ways of explanation to arrive to the same understanding. Some have sufficient instruction to understand and get the things quickly, with few words, and some others, without instruction, need explanations of many ways to reach the same conclusion. And this writing is done for everyone, for those who know and for those who do not know, for those who have instruction and for those who have not. Do you want to know what the immunization represents? It represents many things. First, the eternal salvation. Second, the complete knowledge of the whole being, of beings, of the world, and so successively. Therefore, those who know what the immunization is, consider the Spiritism as a thing without importance. Spiritism is only important to those who do not know what Spiritism is. For those who know the formation of all beings and the effects of all, does not give importance to Spiritism. To the immunization, Spiritism is a null thing. It is very good for those who do not know what it is, for those who are still depending on knowing their origin, the effects and value of everything. It is for you to see how in the magnetism is the factor of this world and its effects. If it were not the magnetism, there would not be any differences, there would not be the ugly, everything would be beautiful, everything would be good. Where the magnetism is, there is no perfection, there is no purity, nor goodness. Everything is appearance, an optic illusion, passing, transitory, and for that, everything ends. That is why this is the world of Pharisees, of the fantasies, of appearances, of hypocrisy, the world of honey and dream, the world of bitter in life. Putting these parts all together and concluding with others, this life becomes a piece of nothing. Why is it a piece of nothing? Because the world is nothing, and in being nothing, the living beings have nothing more than a piece of nothing. Everything shines apparently, but because life is nothing, because the world is nothing, it is worth everything and worth nothing, or it is worth everything apparently. And so, when you recognize better the life, inside and outside, you will arrive to the conclusion that the best in life is to despise it, because the nothing apparently is everything and in truth it is nothing. And what is so, the despising is the best of all. Those who arrive to the conclusion that life is and what the world is, look at everything with a great indifference, and if everyone had the true knowledge and recognition of these realities, there would not be discontentment, fights, nor wars, for to everything you give the despise. Because everyone is living to the contrary of what you should live, it is that you face life as such a worthy thing that you get annoyed by everything, you fight for everything, always seeking a pantheon of glories raised out of nothing, for considering the nothing as everything, without knowing that this everything only has an apparent value. Then there, the living being deceived and magnetized by appearances let themselves to be taken down a cliff without realizing that the appearances deceive and deprive themselves. It is a nothing with appearance of being everything, and that in truth it is nothing. That is why who does not know, who are not orientated, make of this a great confusion, interpreting the nothing with his judgment a value which it does not have, until they arrive to the conclusion that nothing in this life is worth it, because the nothing transforms life in nothing in the same way it does to the world, and the appearances cannot ever highlight the shining. It only needs to be apparent for it to be something within the law of transformation, from nothing to everything and from everything to nothing. And so, the everything of life only has value to those who do not know what life is. They make a judgment of value that does not exist, to later on, then, to reflect better on the appreciation of transformation to the natural. Therefore, what is worth the most, the everything apparent or the true everything? It is the true everything. Where can be found the true everything? In rational immunization. In rational immunization you find the true everything, and the apparent everything is in the enchantment. The true everything is the knowledge that everyone seeks and not the apparent everything. The apparent everything, today is one thing, tomorrow is something else. Therefore, those who have the knowledge of rational immunization can only accept the true everything. That one who knows rational immunization, which knowledge is in this writing, will never drop the true everything to embrace the apparent everything. That one who does not have this knowledge will always judge the wrong for the right and the right for the wrong. And when he comes to know the true right, he will naturally be surprised and will exclaim, "Finally I have adjusted myself to my natural." The apparent nothing is worth a lot to those who do not know the true everything. Who has the knowledge of their natural, which is the true everything, does not give importance to this everything originated from nothing, because the everything from nothing is worth nothing. Apparently the everything from nothing enhances value, but in truth it does not have any. Then you usually say, the right of the crooked is crooked. If you were not crooked, you would not depend on learning to get it right. Always learning the wrong and the living being making mistakes, twisting the right definitively. It is in this point that all illusions end or you die. Here it is explained, the life of those who know everything only apparently and do not know the true everything, for ignoring your natural origin. The mirror of the world. This work has the amazing utility of making the prose, pride, presumption and vanity disappear. Many people will find it difficult saying that this solution, herein explained in this work, will not be able to be brought to the public. Now, there it is in everyone's hands, the truth of truths, which everyone implores since long. Now, appeared there among all what since long, everyone in the world implores, for being the suffering too much and unbearable in the entire world. One can already live in the world, because one has life and has to live, because living as everyone lives, it is not worth living. In certain moments, one lost the pleasure in life. The world was indeed left to deceit, and the street organ played just one music, suffering, and the more suffering, the more everyone had to suffer. However, within a short time, rational immunization will be the order of the day in all places, in all corners, and in all holes. You will only count on rational immunization, reading persistently to become immunized and meeting with all your wishes of eternal happiness, eternal salvation consummated. In a short time, rational immunization will be put above everything and everyone, transforming this deformation of the world to the natural state through the rational knowledge done by rational immunization. You always talked about rational in the whole world, but you did not know how it was. You talked about rational, as you talk, but you live suffering more than animals or wild beasts. Rational immunization will be accepted by everyone, known and recognized as the greatest treasure in the world, as the purest thing that could exist. Everyone becoming immunized, everyone finding the relative comfort on all points of view of themselves, knowing why you were born there, why you have been born there, where you came from, where you are going to and how you are going. Greater happiness, greater contentment, and universal joy will not exist. This is the greatest universal surprise. The deceit will end this cataclysm of mystification, the self-suggestion. Everything disappearing once and for all, ending with this misery maintaining content of all of this fight without base, of all of these waves of illusion, of all of this infernal prelude, of all of this life, where only evil shines, in this immense hole which is the world. All of you there live in this hole looking up to the sky and finding it difficult in your imagination to unveil these mysteries, saying that the world is a phenomenon, an enchantment that cannot be unveiled, full of unsolvable great mysteries that man's imagination cannot solve. Then, you keep saying, we have here this hypocrite knowledge, always learning and never reaching a solution for things. Of truth, we know nothing. The world is a pantheon of misery, an enchanted palace, a tribunal of bitterness due to our imagination not being able to unveil the mysteries that are enclosed in this vast immensity that our sight cannot reach. The sun does not speak to us, the moon the same way, and the stars also. We are loners over here, living in this huge solitude, learning at our own costs, through immense sacrifices, from experiences without end, in this way and means of life we adopted, but no one is happy with, due to us being always incomplete in everything because we are alienated and absent from all true knowledge. And the living being continues with his lamentation, our imagination could never bring the knowledge of why we are like that. Our imagination is already exhausted, and that is why there are so many people in the world and so little knowledge. That is true, the knowledge of everyone in this world is illusionism, it is illusion, and because everyone lives in illusion like that, that is why suffering has always progressed each time more to the point that everyone became misunderstood, and that is why all understandings have been transitory. Today you understand each other very well, tomorrow you are in disagreement on everything and about all points of view. And so, you go wandering in this twilight, rowing against the tide, thinking that you shine because you have life, but do not know why you live. Now it is that you are knowing and becoming aware of the secret of this whole, and can look up here and say, I see the firmament and know why I see it, I know why I am here in this world. The sun is up there and we are here in this hole, on this earth, but now I know why I am stepping on it. I stopped living by groping like I was when I tried to understand everything and knew nothing about this origin. Everyone lives in this world trying to verify this big knowledge, which is a knowledge that does not satisfy, and because of it the suffering is each time bigger. Where there is suffering, there is no knowledge, because if you knew, you would not suffer. Therefore, what is the use of this knowledge which only brings suffering? You all live in illusion like animals, deceived with these affabilities made by the illusions, and you let yourselves be caught by this unworthy misfortune, in which everything is summarized, and from one moment to the next, you understand that this is a grave knowledge, a knowledge of lost ones, of condemned ones, because you could never know why you are like that, convicted to death by nature itself, which is unknown by anyone. You live with knowledge of condemned ones, wherein you don't even know why you live. You cannot be aware of what you do because you are not aware of why you are like that. This is the truth that many living beings see and find in the world, the nullity of everything, the nullity of their own being, because they understand that they live in this so disgusting sludge, that their beginning of formation was from sludge, and that they will end up in sludge. And then, they keep conjecturing, who knows whether we came from sludge, but a different sludge from this one, a sludge unknown to ourselves. There are living beings who think like that and say that the world is such an impostor, and because of it they know nothing, and because of it they are sufferers. All of that are lamentations of many scientists who want to see the reason of things, but because they got embargoed and did not find the satisfactory conclusion, they say to themselves, all is possible. There will come the time when this blindness will end and these deep mysteries unveiled, because the world with its evolution will come to that desired point. And so, destroyed by ignorance, stunned by the surprise of great relevance, when meeting with difficulties, you will say that this or that cannot be, but in time, you will find the easiness. Nothing can be solved by those who do not have the knowledge of the solution, and for this, many people will find the work difficult, saying that this solution, herein clarified in this work, will not be possible to be brought to the public, well clear and crystalline to all. Today you can see by what ways and means these solutions arise among everyone and for everyone. Therefore, everything is impossible to whom does not know, but possible to whom knows. And so, the confusion reigns in all sciences, for improvements, exactness and certification of things. Because science knows nothing, you could not find these solutions or solution to the world and everyone. Only now, in the teachings of this work, it is that you are knowing why you are like that, with this defined base from the beginning to the end. All topics, all requisites and requested improved, lapidated, form a great junction of an angelical greatness for the rational universal equilibrium, through rational immunization. The duty of whom do not know is not to protest what they do not know, but to attempt to know it from the beginning to the end, so afterwards, knowing what is saying. The mania of the rude ones and the delayed ones is to impugn what they do not know, as if they knew it, after they reach the knowledge and realize it is something which interests them. They say, oh, if I knew this since longer I would have grabbed it with nails and teeth. That is what I was looking for, but as we only see lies and fantasies in the world, I thought that this knowledge was like the others that existed and exist in the world. I was mistaken in my weak and betraying science. And so, recognizing the wisdom and pride of many, who think they know, but know nothing, admit nothing, it is that this work has the amazing utility of making disappear the pros, pride, presumption and vanity. This is how I respond to those whom based and base upon the weak science, unconscious and null, embraced by the mortals, for you not to say that rational superior did not warn you in conditions. Scorns and jokes are for those who do not know what they are saying and much less what they are doing. All will reach with their hearts open to the only path they need to follow, so everyone may get back to their place of origin. Defeated are those who thought impossible the redemption of the world, without them first knowing what rational immunization is. There are living beings who are just like that. Very ahead in their opinions, without knowing about what they opine. Later they say, I was mistaken. I thought it was one thing and it was another. So it happens with the advanced ones who do not know or are aware what they are and how they are, but go ahead advancing their opinions as if they knew what they were talking about. For being from rational origin, it is that all living beings have probabilities of becoming immunized. Due to the own nature of everyone being from rational origin, it is why nature and its beings adapt to rational immunization. To become immunized means, unite yourself to purity. Being immunized is the same as being pure, because you already have your virtues that were in the 7 particles transported from that deformation to the natural state to the true formation, rational, on the plane up here, even though still in life, you live enclosed there in that enchantment. So, rational immunization means so many other things that were already mentioned here and everyone knows about. Life is made of those clumsy beings that made everyone be enchanted. Enchantment is so scary, because you came from nothing, and because you came from nothing you did not know how you came about, or that you were made out of that nothing. That is the reason you did not know how you were made. You did not know how you were made from the nothing, and much less knew the reason of this apparent everything. You did not know the nothing and much less the everything. You did not know the world and its deeds. And so, for being made of nothing, it is that you never knew how you were made and much less what you were before that nothing was formed, why that nothing was formed, how that nothing was formed to the formation of that apparent everything. You, so, became completely unaware of your own origin and of the origin of everything, reason why you stay enchanted. Enchanted because you did not know how to give solutions or solution of the origin of your being, of all beings and of the world. The beginning of the deformation. You live because you have life, without knowing why, without knowing the reason of nature, of the world, and of why everyone is like that. Before the nothing, you were deformed bodies at the point of your extinction. Before being rational deformed bodies, you were pure, clean and perfect rationals. And when you were like this, you lived on the plane with the others who are still here with their progress, according to the formation. And why did you want to progress on your own, on that part of the plane that was not ready yet for the normal rational function? Why did you want to progress on your own? Was it due to free will, or were you unaware of the effects of the disequilibrium that could happen? No. You did not foresee any of this, because you did not know what suffering was. You did not know what suffer was, and much less what deformation was. And did not you have anyone to call your attention? You did, and you do have. You did, and you do have rational superior, who warned you not to enter by this part of the plane that was not yet in conditions for the rational progress. But they entered and nothing happened, because nothing happened by simply passing or transiting through. And they thought they should enter and progress on their own. Their attention was called and they did not want to return, thinking that they were very well, because they did not know what suffering was, as the ones who still are over here. They were then getting deeper into this part of the plane, until reaching a certain part that was not yet ready to enter in progress, and they wanted to progress on their own. That part then started to detach from the plane for not being ready to enter in progress. So the beginning of deformation started, so slowly that they did not feel the deformation they were making. It is the same thing as this insignificant comparison. No one feels his growth, you grow without feeling. As they were progressing on their own, they thought they were doing well. They were pure, clean and without defects, but even though their attention was called, they thought they were doing well, and thus started the first steps of the origin of this deformation. The part of the plane which was not ready to enter in progress started to detach from the part that is up here. The part of the plane in which they entered started to deform naturally, descending, and they also deforming themselves, losing the virtues without feeling it, and with time, farther away, they wanted to return, but they could not, and they went on. With time, then, they deformed themselves still more, coming to the extinction of those bodies on the plane, and those who deformed themselves there formed one of the sexes, and those who deformed themselves on the resin of that plane, the other sex. And why did that resin from the plane arise? When the part of the plane started to detach, the beings started to lose their virtues, and those gathered, becoming at the beginning a dull light, and, with time, it increased, it started to warm up. As the living beings started to deform, they were losing the rest of their virtues they had, and those accumulating, getting together on only one focus, which warmed up each time more until, with time, it became an ember, and from this ember, the fire. Here is the origin of that sun. That heat was growing, warming that deformed plane, due to the gathering, on that focus, constantly, of the lost virtues from the rational bodies. Then, later on, that plane turned into water, and the rest of it resin, which, as the heat increased, started to clump up, to roast, and after roasted, with the intensity of the heat, it turned into ashes. And the other part, with the heat, turned into a gum, which became softer until it turned into water. It was the infiltration of this water into the ashes of the resin that, with the heat of the sun, caused the rotting, to later on, after rotting, to appear the microbes of all kinds, of all forms, originating from their all kind of animals. That is why the sun is the creator, generator, and destroyer of everything in this deformed world, because the sun builds, feeds, and destructs. Earth is an animal place, producing animals of all shapes and forms. All came from that nothing there to live in this apparent everything. You never knew how you were made. You were unaware of the before being like that, before you were as you are now, and how you were. Now you are getting to know the before you are like now, the reason you are as you are now, and why you did not know the origin of the world, of everything and of everyone. Later, then, began the formation of the moon, product of the virtues from the deformed plane and few from the virtues of the resin. That is why the moon is not stable, due to it being originated from the virtues of the deformed plane and the virtues of the resin. The plane turned into water and the resin turned into ashes, which is the origin of earth. That is why the moon regulates with water and land, it affects the water, the land, and with all their makings that has action over it. The stars also arose from the rest of the virtues of the water and the resin. Here is a little piece of the conclusion of the before being of this world and of this formation, the way you were. During those primitive stages of formation, everything enhances shining, because not everything was deformed. Now, after everything deformed, it is when the vegetables arose, all very different from the present vegetation, and it was long before, everything paralyzed, the deformation of the human bodies, as you used to call the rational animals, and of the irrational bodies. That is why you did not know how all of this was made, nor you could know how you were made from nothing, and how could this nothing exist. You could not know. Now it is that you are knowing the beginning of it in this clarification done by rational immunization that will transform everything to the natural state, which is here on rational plane. This is by which means everyone's extinction happened, from where you came and where you are going to, how you came and how you will go. Here is the reason of the living beings not knowing who made all of this, and now you are seeing that it was the inhabitants themselves that are there, who gave origin to that world, the way they started its making, the transformations they have been undergoing, the reason why they came to the point of this great lack of knowledge of yourselves and of everything, due to the extinction of the rational formation. Here is the reason why you improvised this owner in the imagination of the adventurers, which you denominate the everything, unaware that the true everything is man. And so, these scientific muses that could never find the base of the reason of the why you are like that, because before you were like that, you were already much superior beings to what you are, and by virtue of the extinction of the rational formation it is that other bodies were formed and everything of the knowledge of your origin got erased, not being possible in this way to know about yourselves or about the other things. In the beginning of this deformation you were true beasts, deaf, mute, and blind. With time and with the deformation of everything, the improvement of the bodies came about, and then, you started to see and hear, but you did not speak, you only growled, howled, wailed, and also tried to understand each other by mimics. Much later, with the passing of time, you started to have an insignificant notion about things and started to stutter and understand each other more freely, when you were more advanced stuttering ones. By the way all of those transitions happened, it is why the living beings could never have any idea about how they were made, because they lasted infinity of eras, always without the knowledge of their origin. In the beginning of deformation everyone was eternal, and only much later the first cases of death started to show up, and then, the deformation was approaching to its end. It was when the vegetation came about, halting the formation of the bodies of the living beings and the animals. The vegetation, when it came about, was very different from the present one. During that time it did not yet rain. That was when the moon started to appear. During that time, the living beings started to use water bit by bit. The use of that water dilated the organism and gave to the living beings the desire of eating, then, starting to make use of the vegetables, giving origin to the first cases of death due to them not knowing which vegetation was poisonous. Until that progress they were eternal, they did not die. After their life cycle passed, they dried up like a tree or like some stick. They did not stink, as from a certain time to now. Before the beginning of this progress you live in, you were beasts, completely without understandings, and that is why you never had the knowledge of why you are like this. It is seen that life originated from nothing, caused when the part of the plane was gummy in deformation, and from the gum you are made until today. The spermatozoid is nothing more than a gum, identifying the beginning of this fact. Earth is the leftover of water, and that is why there is more water than land, which is the resin of the deformed plane. Life, for being constituted from nothing, it had one day to quit being nothing, through the knowledge of rational immunization. Living the way you presently live, you have to frame life in the way you live as a cause of miseries, fighting for so many things, seeking so many things to end up as nothing. Through rational immunization you will stop being free thinkers, forgetting the knowledge of the true ideal. The ideal for everyone is to have his situation defined in the situation of everything in the world, to find the support of himself and to live with certainty of knowing why you live, the reason of this life, of the lives of all beings that live there, irremediably, seeming to be what they are not, imbued in that illusion. With rational immunization, the illusions will be finished, the mysteries and the enchantment. Everything unveiled and divulged from beginning to end, with a clear and crystalline basis, to the reach of everyone. Bad or good interpreters will find the support, the essential base for the well-living and the march to eternal salvation, over all points of view, defined and divulged. The way you used to live, you were true lost ones, without knowing anything about yourselves and about the formation of the world. You lived like true beasts, knowing that you had life and consequently you had to live, without, however, knowing why you lived. You had no notion of any kind about what life is, neither of any other things, summarizing life as treacherous, as a betrayer, like all of its constituents are betrayers, and for not knowing why you lived it is that you arrived to the conclusion of being deceived ones of this world. The illusion is such that suffer is unbearable, due to the disillusions and the prelude of life being of deceit, of betrayer, and impostor. The life everyone desire is of welfare and happiness for everyone, however, you only meet with difficulties to reach that glorification which everyone desires and toward which everyone works, seeing and reverse, everything of evil and of suffering, taking everyone to this bitter hidden place, by the testimony of the illusions, which are the preludes of the waltz that plays among all. And so, there is the laughter, the cry and the passion. Humanity lives like the wind, sometimes blowing hard from one side, sometimes from another, and so on. Then the living beings keep saying, the stories of the world bring us a consternation that the primordial ancestors of the primitive steps of all contemporary ones signalize, in majority, great suffer, by the inflamed deceit, by the shocking impacts of imperfection, which make everyone's lever be an enigma and a great mystery of ourselves and of everything. Since long the popular avalanche implores and pleads for a better life, and the more you wish all that, the more obstacles you meet with for facing what you wish. Then, you dare to say life is wasteful and that everyone is lost, having each one to do for oneself, but not even like that you reach the ideal, which is peace, fraternity and love. Everything always stays in hope, and according the difficulties come out, the living being finds life an intrepid adventure, where you always trip over, keeping happiness at aim, and from tripping over to tripping over, in infinity of obstacles, you always fall in a hole. And so, the disillusions gushing out make humanity lives as in dream, and only later he finds basis to show that life is of dreams. Instead of the ideals, he only finds the reverse, due to no one knowing what they do, doing everything and doing nothing, because that everything came out of nothing and, consequently, everything ends as nothing. Those who say that one sacrifices so much for nothing are right, that the living being lives for living, because he has a life and appears to have pleasure, without so. That is why he says to himself, I hope life does not want me no more, because it is worthless to live when one does not know why one lives, what one does here. Living like that is a waste of time, and that is why suffering is unbearable. What a hopeless world. What a life without use, where the illusion shines so bright that everyone seems to live happily, and in the end, everyone full of his complaints, with his worries, with his preludes, laughing not to cry at certain times. And the living being continued with his talk, this is a strangled life, intimately appearing to be well organized, but when you find out the truth, happiness is deceiving. Apparently we are happy, but intimately, in reality, so unhappy. Here is the reason for this oppressing content of sufferers. Everything is covered with the illusions, and the living being, from one moment to the next, he is nothing, because he betrays, with his behavior, his feelings of a sufferer. He is suffering and appears to be so different, he seems to be well, but that welfare only in appearances. Then, you keep conjecturing, in fantasy is not the reality, and life is only fantasy on all points of view. In fantasy, you live dressed up as happy ones, and everything is completely the opposite for you. Inside yourself, by what you hide, you cover up the largest of rotten things on the robe of appearances. There it is, the world in focus by the prism of what you are, detailing the reason why you are like that, showing that it is a puff of smoke that comes and goes. No one doubts it, and that is why no one trusts oneself, because life does not give or have any warranties. It is a machine that, from one moment to the next, stops, and in seconds, everything ends. Humanity lives, so, reigning in the fever of confusion. It could not be any different, due to everyone being confused, due to everyone adopting the methods of a moribund enchantment. That is the truth, but illusion keeps reality hidden, and for this reason, suffering there is despairing. You feed the illusions as if it were an element of great value, and the reality of life itself, of the being itself, you demean, you hide, betrayed by those fantasies that were created and invented by hypocrites and pretenders. You are always betrayed by the pride you display, seen the smudge on all of those who claim, not standing the weight of the cross, of the responsibility of yourselves, saying that life is a pain and sufferings. You do not know that who gave life to this world were its own inhabitants. That the own inhabitants were the causers of all of this, and so, everyone depends on each other to live, each one defining himself to live up to when life wants to supply the body with its own anxieties. You do not know that you are hypocrites who maintain in your I what is not of yourselves, and because it is not of yourselves, you lose it from one moment to the next. There it is, one more piece of the reason you are what you are, in this knowledge of the true origin, of the true formation of everything and everyone. And so, in the apotheosis of the rational welfare, the immunized one will find all the fast solutions for what is necessary. By means of rational immunization, the living being will stabilize and will follow in the path of successive glories, due to the wonderful future being in all mass linked to rational superior. With the power of the immunization, all plans disappear, plan this or that, which you keep doing there on that world of enchanted ones, you are going to see the true action in the execution of the thing's actions, the positive and the reality. Once immunized, you acquire this faculty, possible, within the natural norms of things. The living being stops being a fool, of living groping, in the uncertainties and in the experiences. Thus, the solution of the immunization, of the immunized ones, becomes integral, and then the clairvoyants assume the responsibilities of the facts, and the living being finds himself solid by the realizations, by the acts, by the effects, and by the rational immunizing action. So justifies there a consolidating content, in such a way that you will not find obstacles to have within yourselves the positivity of what you aim for, the intention toward the goodness of the equilibrium of the immunized ones. This is an echo which never sounded in the world, only now it is there vibrating on the infant's ears, who did not know the existence of this point of faculty of the human being. Then, being immunized and being equilibrated is the same thing. In the immunized being, the carboniferous magnetic actions that numb the living being disappear, and the living being creates within himself a pantheon of glories, and he becomes a glorious and a glorifier. Then, by this plenitude of who see, who know, and who are aware of the effects, one reaches the point of understanding that he brings with him the rational treasure, which is the treasure of treasures, the most integrally or integrating valuable piece that the virile human, since long, was in need. It is a knowledge that is not science, due to developing naturally within the human being himself, through the knowledge of what immunization is. There is no need for practice, there is no need for theory, there is no need for development. There is only the need to know what rational immunization is, to then be certain that you have the liberation in all points of view, of being completely free from that enchantment of this world. Here is the redemption by the basic points, by the solutions of all mysteries of this enchantment, and the truth proved and confirmed of all this reality. This is the eternal salvation and benefit of all and of the world, by the knowledge of the beginning, the end of the world and of all, through the demonstrating basis, through the exuberant proofs, through the equilibrium and trough, the lapidation of the formation of everything, within the proved texts of the rational base. Then, the living being keeps saying, what a world! That is why this world is not ours. We are born and die because we are not in our true world. It is clear that we are not from this world. If we were, we would be eternal and the world would be ours. Because we are out of our world, it is that here we do not have equilibrium. We do not know the true formation, we do know the apparent formation done by our calculations over here on earth, summarizing everything in the infinity, mysteriously and without solution of anything. That is why everything in this world deposes against the human being, starting with nature itself and ending among everything and among everyone. The world, under those conditions, is considered a freak of nature. Life is of sacrifices, where one always suffers, and after suffering, one dies and everything disappears. Once dead, everything disappears, for this not being your world. Nature is considered by the science from there on earth as an indecipherable and indescribable phenomenon for the living being's imagination. The mystery has always been kept there, only now you are knowing why you were born and disappeared there without wanting it, everything ending into nothing, for being out of your world. Now it is that you are seeing that you are indeed deformed ones. The deformation is such that you got used to this nature as it is. You got used apparently, since, truly, you were never happy of being like that, beings always in suffering, and suffering does not make anyone happy. Here is the reason of living this life there, full of complaints, full of monstrosities, where nature revolts against its own inhabitants, due to the inhabitants not being from that world there. Nature raises you, makes you suffer and kills you, because you are not from there. It revolts and strikes against the human being through an electric spark, a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, an epidemic, incurable diseases, beasts, insects, wild animals, too much heat, poisonous thorns, finally, all sorts of bad treatments. If you belong to this world, nature would not disfavor you that much. It is proved that all live deceived, cheated, suffering the consequences of all of this. However, now it is that you are seeing where you came from, why you came, and how you were going through infinity of trances until you got to where you are, to reach now the knowledge and know the reason of all of this, where you are going to, which is to your true place. It is proved and confirmed that this is not the true life. The true life is this one up here, on rational plane. And who is to be blamed for life to be like that? The own inhabitants there, and not this Pharisee created by the imagination of them, as if he had lived among them and ran off from the place, or died, leaving the humans orphans. Then they would say, he is deaf, mute, and proud. Deaf for not attending anyone's supplication, mute for never having spoke to anyone, and proud because he does not comfort anyone. That is why there are the non-believers, the atheists and the positivists, who like to see to believe. Some have already disillusioned since long, others are still in illusion, due to the lack of capacity to deduce the things which are in front of their eyes. What were you? Rationals, pure, clean, and perfect, living among the other rationals that are up here with their progress of purity, where there is no suffering or different genders. Therefore, by the essence of these pages, which contents no one ever imagined that could come to everyone's hands, where there are no reasons for doubt then, seeing that it is not a problem or an enigma, but the truth of truths at everyone's reach. Your imagination gives an entire null reflection. For this, everyone had to live groping, in experiences, always adventuring in this hellish despotism. In this life, the goodness is unknown, but the evil, reason why only exist in the world all that is bad. Bad is already your nature, which apparently adapts itself to everything, but in truth, you are truly untamable beasts. You all know that you are like it, but it was lacking the sureness of why you are like that. You understood life according to your experiences, looking for ways and means to elevate yourselves by the molds you adopt to be able to live. Here is the reason of not having conviction of your triumphant face, from time to time, with surprises of all sizes, starting with night, which you do not know how it will be. You are all missivists, taking advantage of the opportunities for the pleasure of life by the best way you can, seeking to succeed with the way of living without stability. Everything transforms itself because of deformation. Since everything transforms, there is no stability, and because there is no stability, there is transformation in all beings. That is why man has adopted as base the law of transformation, and they always kept themselves under the natural law of deformation, which is the same law of transformation. Transforming all beings and multiplying these transformations, you had indeed to become nothing, through the eclipse of degeneration. Transforming, go on degenerating, and degenerating, one gets smaller. Notice that, due to the progress of degeneration, you get weaker due to the weakening of the microbes. People of times past had a longer duration, but since they came on degenerating, the generations came on reducing their lifetime, each time shorter, by the transformation and degeneration that will wane these generations, each time more, until the extinction of the beings. All of this is recognized by science, and you dare to say that everything transforms into beings, which continue to be lives, even though minuscule and always multiplied. Then, with time, the extinction of these bodies would come, which would deform themselves, by the law of transformation, into much worse bodies. However, through rational immunization, the extinction of that deformation will be embargoed, trough the integral knowledge of everything, for not knowing where you came from, how you came, where you are going to, and how you are going. Through the integral knowledge given by the rational knowledge,